Autumn, that wonderful, beautiful time of the year. Well, it's my favourite anyway. But it's not just about all the harvests, but it's also about collecting all the seeds from the flowers and the fruits and vegetables that you've grown so far throughout the year. Now, one of the first ones are the good old runner bean. Now, we left the rest of these pods to actually go overripe on these actual plants to actually dry out. Now, it's been very, very wet here, and it will continuously to be very wet for multiple weeks by the looks of it. But we've left these on to dry out naturally. Now, the great thing about runner beans, you don't have to eat them just for their pod. You can actually grow them to eat the bean. How pretty is that bean? So these runner beans, I am drying some out completely to actually regrow for next year. That's free bean. Now, these seeds weren't that cheap. When I say not that cheap, they were about £3 a packet. And I probably had about 10-15 seeds, if that. And it's one of the easiest plants to actually save your seeds from. Now, all you have to do with these beans is leave them to ripen as long as what you can possibly do on your plant. But if it looks like it really is going to be really wet weather, they may have a chance of going mouldy on the plant. So what you can do, you can either pick the whole pod and lay them singular somewhere on a tray, a rack, a warm windowsill, somewhere where they're going to dry out naturally. Or you can pod them and actually put them on a rack or somewhere airy, not too humid, somewhere nice and warm, and they'll dry out naturally then for you to sow your seeds for next year. Or if you're going to use these to cook, you can literally harvest them when they get to this stage and pop them in the freezer. That is it. Now, you can dry them out completely as you would do for saving seed and pop them in a jar to store long term. It just means that you have to soak them overnight before you cook them for at least 10 minutes on their own in some boiling water. This removes any of the toxins. But if you pop them into the freezer, apparently you only have to cook them for that 10 minutes in some boiling water first. So that is something I'm definitely going to try. I love adding pulses and beans and things to my casseroles and curries and things like that. It really does bulk out your meal and saves you a pretty penny too. Now, I use these sweet bags. You can get them really, really cheap, even the brown paper bags. And if they're dry and they're ready to go, and I'm saving for seed, I literally just pop them in. Mark them, name them, do whatever you want, your harvest date of when you pick them so you can keep track of it, because the likelihood is if you're saving a load for seed, you probably won't use them all in the first year anyway. And that's all you have to do to save your runner bean seed. Now, one of the other seeds we're actually saving is our Nasturtium seeds. That's what these ones look like. Now, these are great, and whereas they were slow to start in early spring, they really did pick up through the summer months, and they were truly beautiful. They're great to distract pests away from your main planting area, almost like a sacrificial plant. But 9 times out of 10 they pull through and they give you so many different seeds. But you can also pickle them as well and use them as poor man's capers, which I think I'm going to try. Oh, excuse me, didn't mean to spit out. But I'll be collecting as many of these as I can to go in our new flower border that we're going to be adding in for next year. Now, as you can see, there is Nasturtium seeds everywhere, all in the ground, and the several plants that I've already dug up, there is thousands of seeds that I've left. But I'm happy to leave those in, and if I need to move them, I can just dig them up and move them. Now, these are Belotti beans, and as you can see, they really were quite damaged in all the wet weather we've had. And in fact, that's a Belotti bean there. Now, I've been collecting these seeds to grow for next year but I want some taller varieties because I find that the dwarf ones are just too close to the ground, and when it comes to drying the beans on the actual plant, a lot of the times they're just rotting away. These might be okay to harvest though. In fact, I've just pulled up the whole plant. It's dead anyway, so it makes no difference. Now, some of the other ones that I'm going to be collecting is some coriander seed. Now, I have collected quite a lot of this, and we've actually been eating it, but we've left this particular one in just so I can collect the seed to try my own coriander, to see if I can get better germination rates than I have this year from shop bought coriander. Another one is this dill. Now, I wanted to grow it for dill seed anyway, more for seed for next year, but also for cooking. We've used a lot of the leaves, the foliage, for cooking, and it's been fantastic with our dill pickles and some fresh salmon, things like that. It really does lift a meal. But all this is starting to go to seed, and I'm hoping it's going to work, because I want plenty to cook with and plenty to re-sow for next year. My fennel. Unfortunately, this was ready at the same time where I wasn't very well, and other commitments and time and everything else. Life can sometimes get in the way, but I'm trying to make the best of a situation. I'm trying to grow it for some seed. Now, there's plenty of bulbs here. As you can see, it's the whole little area. But these are so tasty, and I'll be using these seeds for culinary uses and to actually sow for next year. But I've just got to wait till they're ready. Now, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that these will be ready in time before any frost or anything like that actually damages them. Now, I have got other bulb fennel that's growing much stronger, much better than what these ones did. Now, where these grew very big, very healthy, very well, the actual bulbs were really they were kind of pathetic. So I'll be choosing a different variety next year, and I'll have to do a bit of research into which ones I do that with. Now, when it comes to squashes, you're better off buying fresh seed, or you're in an area where it's only one variety that's there. But remember, insects pollinate your plants and your flowers, and they can travel quite a distance. So to be on the safe side, it's always better to buy your squash plants, because of the toxin that can arise from replanting those seeds that grow in that squash or pumpkin that year. For me, it's not worth the risk, but it's very easy to find if your plant or squash has got that toxin in it, is by just licking a little bit of the flesh. Not taking a chunk, not biting a massive bite, but just giving it a lick. If it's really bitter, then don't eat it. Just discard it, get rid of it in your compost bin. That's the best way that I've found to find if it has been cross-pollinated and if there's any issues with your squashes. Of course, there's your sunflowers. Now, we have harvested a lot of our sunflower heads to dry out to use for next year. But it's one of those things that are really good to collect your seed. It's amazing how many seeds you actually get from one head of sunflowers. You want to choose your best head for your sunflowers. This means it will probably have a good gene pool in it, and it will probably give you a bit stronger growth. Now, we leave some for the wildlife and some for next year. I think that's a fair exchange. Now, it's not just your veggie seeds that you can save this time of year. You've got your poppy seeds, your cornflowers, or your wild meadow seeds that you may have already sown. You can actually collect these as they've dried out, put them into a paper bag, and then scatter them for next year. And that's what I've been doing with the flowers from my garden. Anything that's gone to a seed head, I've actually collected. From alliums to lilies, to dahlias, to wildflower, wild meadow areas. I've been collecting all the seeds to bring to add to my allotment for next year. It makes it so much cheaper to be able to grow. I've also took cuttings from my rosemary bush from the garden, and that's taken really well. My lavender bush, I've taken several sprigs, and again, that's all rooted. And I'll be doing more of that as I go along. Now, I have got a fantastic grapevine in the garden, which I've had for about 15 years, give or take. And it's not the most fantastic grapes, and I was thinking of actually taking some cuttings for that to grow down on the allotment. At home, it's against a south-facing wall, and it goes so big every single year. I've actually cut it right back every second year, and it still grows about 30 or 40 metres at a time. It's really, really prolific. And maybe next year I'll actually take a little bit care of it and actually take some of the grapes off and actually grow it properly. But I'm thinking of actually taking some cuttings and bringing it down here. Again, that's another freebie. Now, obviously there's loads of other stuff you can collect your own seed from. Now, some plants you need a lot more in the ground to actually go to seed, just so they're pulling enough different genes to make a really good gene pool. Otherwise, it'll either not germinate or it will be very poor and not actually worth all the effort. Things like you've got your beetroots, you've got your onions, you've got your lettuces, you've got your cabbages, you've got a lot of stuff that you can actually allow to go to seed. But some you'll need to wait to the following year to actually get the seed. Things like your onions, if you've grown them from seed this year, it'll be next year when you harvest the seeds. Things like certain lettuces and things you can actually leave in the ground, normally a bit earlier on in the season, so the frost doesn't kill it before it gets a chance to flower. That is something that you can do with any bolted fruits or vegetables like that. So there's lots of ways that you can collect your seed. Just give it a little bit of an experiment. There's nothing lost from you trying to grow your own seeds. The only things I don't try and regrow is my courgettes and my squashes. And again, that's only because of cross-pollination. And I've got no problem actually buying them in each year. But things like your French beans, your green beans, any peas, things like that, you can leave on to dry out to grow for next year. It's a really good cost-saving method, and it will really cut down your expenses when you're trying to grow your own food. So what seed saving are you doing, guys, this year? I was supposed to be doing an awful lot more than what I've done this year, and I'm hoping to be a little bit better next year and actually have an area dedicated to just growing plants for the length of time that I need to do to actually get the seeds off of them. But I want to grow really good varieties in the first place to do that. I don't see the point in saving your own seeds if it's a rubbish variety and stuff that I don't actually enjoy. So it's going to be a work in progress for me to do this, as I find good varieties, good tasty fruits and vegetables that I can actually do that with. But some of the other things I have done that I haven't filmed today is my Cape gooseberries. Again, I want to grow those next year, but I want to do it inside a polytunnel. Some blueberry seeds, I've actually saved loads of those. Chili seeds, I've collected a load of chili seeds from the different types that we've actually got. My watermelons, I collected my seeds from there because it's not an F1 variety. I did even dry out some corn to actually do for next year, but unfortunately something got to it and ran away with the cob. So just let me know in the comments, guys, what kind of things you collect throughout the season for you to be able to grow next year. And of course, it's not just the seeds, it's cuttings too. I'll be starting to take certain cuttings over the next month or two to grow on for next year.